Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. Imagine spending months renovating your dream home from a distance only to walk in and find a stranger in a bathrobe sipping expensive wine in your kitchen. She didn't just break in, she claimed my house was now community property. But she didn't realize I was recording every word, and her power trip was about to cost her everything. I work as a specialized consultant in the tech sector. The job pays well and I can do most of it remotely, which is why I was able to pull off what happened next. About 8 months ago, I bought a house in one of those upscale gated communities that seems almost too nice to be real. You know the type. Manicured lawns, strict architectural guidelines, the whole deal. The property itself was a probate sale. An elderly couple had owned it for decades, and after they passed, it sat on the market for 18 months because the family couldn't agree on anything. By the time it went to auction, the place looked rough from the outside. The landscaping was dead, the paint was peeling, and there were rumors in the neighborhood that it was going to be bought by a developer and torn down. I got it for a steal at the auction, not because I'm particularly clever, but because everyone else thought it needed to be demolished. What they didn't know was that the bones of the house were solid. The foundation was perfect, the roof had been replaced just 3 years prior, and the electrical and plumbing were all up to code. It just needed a serious cosmetic overhaul. Here's where my work situation became relevant. I had a 6-month contract that required me to be on site in another city about 4 hours away. The timing was perfect. I hired a contractor I trusted, gave him the keys and a detailed plan, and told him to gut the interior and make it beautiful. We're talking new flooring, new kitchen, new bathrooms, fresh paint, the works. I set up automatic payments for the HOA dues and property taxes, checked in with the contractor via video calls every week, and basically let the house transform while I was gone. The HOA never bothered to reach out. I paid my dues on time every month, never missed a payment. As far as I was concerned, we were square. I figured they were probably thrilled that someone was finally fixing up the eyesore at the end of the street. What I didn't know was that the HOA president had other plans. I finished my contract 2 weeks early. The client was happy with my work and didn't need me for the final wrap-up meeting, so I decided to surprise everyone and head home early. I packed up my car with the personal belongings I'd had in the furnished apartment I'd been renting, grabbed some takeout for the road, and made the drive back. It was late afternoon when I pulled up to my house. The sun was setting, casting this golden light over everything, and I remember thinking how good the exterior looked. The contractor had repainted it a soft gray with white trim, and the landscaping company had done an amazing job bringing the yard back to life. I felt this surge of excitement. This was it. My house. My investment. My fresh start. I walked up to the front door with my keys in hand. I'd installed a smart lock before I left, one of those fancy ones you can control from your phone. But when I went to unlock it, nothing happened. The lock itself was different. It was a traditional deadbolt, brass and shiny. That's when I noticed something through the window. The front window has these sheer curtains that let light in but are supposed to make it hard to see inside during the day. But with the setting sun behind me and the interior lights on, I could see straight through into my living room. There was furniture in there. High-end patio furniture, the kind with thick cushions and powder-coated frames. It was arranged in my living room like someone was staging a magazine shoot. And on the kitchen island, which I could just barely see from that angle, there was a bottle of wine. Not just any wine. A bottle of something expensive looking with a fancy label sitting there half empty next to a single wine glass. My brain couldn't process it. Had the contractor staged the house? That didn't make sense. I'd told him to leave it empty. Had someone broken in? But why would a burglar bring patio furniture and expensive wine? Then I saw movement. A woman walked out of the hallway that led to the primary bedroom. She was wearing a plush white bathrobe, the kind you see at fancy spas, and she was carrying a book. Her hair was up in one of those messy buns that takes 20 minutes to make look casual, and she had reading glasses perched on her nose. She walked right into my kitchen, picked up the wine glass, took a sip, and leaned against the counter like she owned the place. I stood there on my own front porch, completely frozen, watching this stranger treat my house like her personal retreat. Then she saw me. Her eyes went wide and she marched straight to the front door. I heard the deadbolt slide back and the door swung open. "Can I help you?" she said. Not nervous, not apologetic, annoyed. I was so shocked that I just stared at her for a second. She was probably in her mid-50s with the kind of tan you get from spending too much time by a pool and the kind of highlights that cost more than my car payment. "I think there's been some kind of mistake," I started, but she cut me off. You need to leave, she said firmly. This is private property and you're trespassing. I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. The absurdity of the situation hit me all at once. Excuse me? This house belongs to the homeowners association, she said, like she was explaining something obvious to a child. It's been requisitioned for community use. I'm house sitting to prevent squatters and vandals from moving in. If you have business with the HOA, you can submit a formal request through the proper channels. Requisitioned, I repeated slowly. By the HOA. That's correct. She crossed her arms. Now I'm going to ask you one more time to leave before I call the real owners and have you removed. The real owners. I almost lost it right there. Instead, I pulled out my phone and started recording. I'd love to see the documentation authorizing this requisition, I said calmly. Can you show me the board meeting minutes where this was approved? Or maybe the lease agreement between you and the property owner? Her face went red. I am the board. I'm the HOA president, and I have full authority to make decisions regarding abandoned properties in this neighborhood. This house was vacant for months and was bringing down property values. We had every right to take control of it. Interesting, I said. And when did the board vote on this? We had a meeting, she snapped. Everything was done properly. Now get off this property before I call the police and have you cited for trespassing. I wanted to tell her right then and there that I owned the house. I wanted to see her face when she realized she'd been living in someone else's home. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way she was so absolutely certain she was right. Maybe it was the way she'd threatened me on my own property. Whatever it was, I decided I wanted to do this right. Okay, I said, holding up my hands. I'll go, but I'll be back with my attorney. Good luck with that, she said, and slammed the door in my face. I walked back to my car, got in, and drove around the corner. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from anger. This woman had broken into my house, changed my locks, moved in her furniture, and had the audacity to threaten me with trespassing charges. I pulled over and took a few deep breaths. Then I opened the app for my Ring doorbell camera. I'd installed a small one when I first bought the place, tucked up under the eave where it wasn't obvious unless you were looking for it. I'd kept it active the whole time I was gone, just to monitor when the contractor came and went. I'd mostly been ignoring the notifications since I trusted him, but now I scrolled back through the footage. What I found made my blood boil. 3 weeks ago, there was footage of her pulling up in a luxury SUV with another woman. They'd tried the front door, found it locked, then walked around to the back. 20 minutes later, the front door opened from the inside. They'd broken in through a back window. Over the next few days, the footage showed her making multiple trips, bringing in furniture, boxes, suitcases. She wasn't house-sitting, she was moving in. Then about a week ago, there was footage of 6 people arriving in the morning. They were all dressed casually, but carrying folders and coffee cups. They went inside and didn't come out for 3 hours. When they finally left, they were laughing and chatting like they'd had a great time. She'd hosted a meeting in my house, a board meeting or a social gathering or who knows what, but she'd used my home like it was a community clubhouse. I saved all the footage to my phone and called the police non-emergency line. I need to report a burglary in progress, I told the dispatcher. Someone has broken into my home and is currently living there. The dispatcher asked for my address and told me officers were on the way. I drove back to the house and parked on the street, waiting. About 10 minutes later, 2 police cars pulled up. I got out and met them on the sidewalk. One of the officers was older, maybe close to retirement, with gray hair and a patient expression. The other was younger, a woman who looked like she'd seen her share of weird calls. "You're the homeowner?" the older officer asked. "Yes, I bought this house 8 months ago. I've been out of town for work, and when I came back today, I found someone living here. She changed my locks and moved in her own furniture." "And she's still inside?" "Yes, she claims the HOA gave her permission, but I never authorized anything." The older officer exchanged a glance with his partner. "Let's go talk to her." We walked up to the front door together and the older officer knocked. There was a pause, then the door opened. The HOA president's expression went from annoyed to concerned when she saw the police. "Officers, thank goodness you're here. This person has been harassing me. I already told them to leave." "Ma'am, this person claims to be the owner of this property," the officer said calmly. "Do you have documentation showing you have permission to be here?" "I'm the president of the homeowners association," she said. "This property was abandoned and in violation of multiple covenants. The board authorized me to take temporary control to protect property values in the neighborhood." "Do you have that authorization in writing?" "I don't need it in writing. I am the board. I have full authority." The younger officer spoke up. Ma'am, even if the HOA wanted to take some kind of action regarding an abandoned property, they would need to follow legal procedures. They can't just move into someone's house. But it was abandoned, she insisted. Her voice was getting higher, more shrill. No one has been here for months. The previous owners are dead. This is community property now. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone, I purchased this property at a probate auction 8 months ago. I've been paying HOA dues every month since then. I have the deed, the closing documents, and bank statements showing the automatic payments. I pulled up the documents on my phone and showed them to the officers. The older one looked them over carefully, then looked at the HOA president. Ma'am, do you have any documentation showing ownership or legal right to be in this property? Her face had gone pale. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. The HOA owns a percentage of all properties in the community. It's in the covenants. That's not how property ownership works, the younger officer said. If you don't have legal documentation showing you have permission to be here, you're trespassing. This is ridiculous, the HOA president said. Her voice was shaking now. I've been maintaining this property. I've been protecting it. You should be thanking me, not treating me like a criminal. Ma'am, you need to gather your belongings and leave the property, the older officer said. The homeowner has documentation proving ownership. If you refuse to leave, we'll have to arrest you for trespassing. I watched the color drain completely from her face. She looked at me, then at the officers, then back at me. For a moment, I thought she might actually refuse, but then she stepped back into the house without a word. We'll wait while she gets her things, the older officer told me. We stood there on the porch for about 20 minutes while she moved around inside. Through the window, I could see her grabbing items frantically and stuffing them into bags. She wasn't being careful, she wasn't being organized, she was panicking. When she finally came out, she had 3 large shopping bags and a suitcase. Her bathrobe was gone, replaced with yoga pants and a designer sweatshirt. Her face was blotchy and red. I'll be back for the rest, she said to no one in particular. Actually, I said, I'm going to need to document everything that's in there before I allow anyone back in. I don't know what you've done to my property, and I want to make sure nothing is damaged or missing. She whirled on me. Are you accusing me of theft? I'm saying I came home to find a stranger living in my house, I said evenly. I think it's reasonable to want to inventory my property before allowing that stranger back inside. The younger officer nodded. That's within your rights as the property owner. Ma'am, if you have more belongings inside, you can coordinate with the homeowner to retrieve them at a later time. The HOA president looked like she wanted to argue, but the older officer's expression made it clear that wasn't going to happen. She grabbed her bags and stormed off to her SUV, which was parked in my driveway. She threw her things in the back, got in, and peeled out of the neighborhood like she was being chased. The officers stayed with me while I walked through the house. The smart lock had been completely removed and replaced with a standard deadbolt. There was furniture everywhere that wasn't mine. In the primary bedroom, she'd set up a whole bedroom set, complete with expensive linens and decorative pillows. The bathroom had her toiletries, medications, and what looked like several $100s worth of skincare products. In the kitchen, I found the wine bottle I'd seen earlier. It was a 2015 vintage that probably cost $200. There was a second bottle in the wine fridge along with several other expensive-looking bottles. The guest bedroom had been turned into a storage room with boxes stacked along the walls. I opened one and found HOA documents, files, folders full of neighborhood complaints and violation notices. She hadn't just been using my house as a personal retreat. She'd been using it as an HOA office. The officers took photos of everything and gave me a case number. They told me I could file for a restraining order if I wanted and that I should definitely talk to a lawyer about pursuing charges. After they left, I stood in my living room looking at the disaster this woman had created. I was furious, but I was also calculating. She hadn't just broken into my house. She'd lied to the police about having authority to be there. She'd brought HOA business into my private property, and based on those meeting videos from my Ring camera, she'd involved other people. I called a lawyer that night. Actually, I called 3 lawyers, but the third one was the charm. Her name was on a building downtown, and when I explained the situation, she sounded almost gleeful. "This is going to be fun," she said. "Don't touch anything in that house. I'm sending a forensic cleaner tomorrow to document everything. We're going to nail her for breaking and entering, theft of services, fraud, and civil trespass. And we're going after the HOA too for breach of fiduciary duty." "Can we do that?" I asked. If she told the board she had authorization to use that property for HOA business and she didn't, that's a major liability issue for them. They're going to want to settle fast. The forensic cleaners came the next day. They photographed everything, documented every item that wasn't mine, and estimated the cost of cleaning and restoration. When I saw the bill they were going to send, I nearly choked. $5,000. For what was essentially a deep clean and removal of someone else's belongings. But my lawyer assured me it was worth it. "We're not just cleaning your house," she explained. "We're documenting a crime scene. Every dollar we spend now is a dollar we can claim in damages later." Over the next week, my lawyer got to work. She filed a police report for breaking and entering. She sent a letter to the HOA board demanding an emergency meeting. And she filed a civil lawsuit against the HOA president personally for something like 15 different violations. The HOA's response was immediate and predictable. They panicked. Turns out the HOA president had never told the other board members what she was really doing. She'd told them the house had been donated to the community for use as a meeting space. She'd shown them doctored documents that made it look legitimate. She'd been billing the HOA for utilities and maintenance on my property, pocketing the money and using my house as her personal vacation home. The board called an emergency meeting and invited me to attend. My lawyer advised me to go, so I showed up at the community center on a Tuesday night. There were about 15 people there, all looking uncomfortable. The HOA president wasn't among them. The vice president, a nervous-looking man in his 60s, stood up when I arrived. "We want to apologize," he said immediately. "We had no idea what was happening. When we approved the use of the property, we were told it had been donated to the association. We would never have authorized someone to break into a homeowner's property." "Then you were lied to," I said, "and I'm holding all of you responsible." That got everyone's attention. The room went dead silent. "My attorney has filed suit against your president personally and against the HOA as an organization. You failed in your fiduciary duty to verify the information she gave you. You failed to maintain proper oversight of her actions, and you allowed HOA funds to be used for what was essentially a personal vacation property." The vice president looked like he might be sick. "We'll remove her from the board immediately. We'll cooperate fully with any investigation. Please, we're just volunteers trying to keep the neighborhood nice. We didn't know." "That's between you and my lawyer," I said, "but I'll tell you this. If you want to minimize the damage, you'll vote her out tonight. You'll revoke her access to all HOA accounts and records, and you'll hire an independent auditor to go through the last 2 years of finances, because I guarantee she didn't just do this to me." They did exactly that. The vote was unanimous. The HOA president was removed from the board and stripped of her membership. They changed all the locks on the community center, changed all the passwords on the bank accounts, and hired a forensic accountant. What the accountant found was stunning. The HOA president had been embezzling for 18 months. She'd been approving fake invoices from vendors that didn't exist, billing the HOA for services that were never performed, and paying herself consulting fees that were never authorized. The total came to over $60,000. The criminal charges came next. The district attorney's office got involved, and suddenly this wasn't just a civil matter anymore. Breaking and entering, fraud, embezzlement, the list kept growing. My lawyer kept me updated every step of the way. The HOA president tried to fight it first. She hired her own lawyer and claimed she'd been acting in good faith to protect the neighborhood. But the evidence was overwhelming. The ring camera footage, the police reports, the forensic cleaning documentation, the HOA's own record showing she'd lied to the board. She tried to settle. My lawyer told me she'd offered to pay back everything she'd taken and leave the neighborhood quietly. I said no. I wanted her to face consequences. The lawsuit dragged on for 6 months. During that time, I moved into my house and started making it a home. I had the smart lock reinstalled, I had a security system put in with cameras covering every angle of the property, and I had the contractor come back to undo some of the changes the HOA president had made. She'd actually painted one of the guest bedrooms without my permission, and the color was hideous. The neighborhood was different after word got out about what happened. People I'd never met started stopping by to apologize. Apparently, the HOA president had been tyrannical for years, writing violation notices for minor infractions and threatening people with fines over things like slightly overgrown hedges or trash cans left out an hour too long. Everyone had been afraid of her. Now they were relieved. A few people even thanked me for standing up to her. The settlement came through in month 7. The HOA's insurance paid out a substantial sum for the break-in, the unauthorized use of my property, and the emotional distress. The HOA president had to pay personally for the forensic cleaning, the legal fees, and punitive damages. The total came to over $200,000. She couldn't pay it. Her husband filed for divorce within weeks of the charges being filed, and in the divorce settlement, he got their house. She had to sell her luxury SUV, her jewelry, and pretty much everything else she owned just to make a dent in what she owed me. Last I heard, she's living in a small apartment about 30 miles away and working retail to pay off her debts. The criminal charges resulted in probation and community service, but the financial consequences destroyed her. Meanwhile, I used the settlement money to finish my house exactly the way I wanted it. I installed a water feature in the front yard, a beautiful fountain with lights that turn on at dusk. Technically, it probably violates some obscure HOA rule about water features and light pollution, but no one has said a word. The new board president actually complimented me on it. I also donated some of the settlement money to a legal fund for homeowners fighting abusive HOAs. It felt like the right thing to do. Looking back on the whole situation, I still can't believe the audacity of it. She saw a house she assumed was abandoned, decided she wanted it, and just moved in. She didn't check the property records. She didn't try to contact the owner. She just assumed she could take what she wanted because she had a little bit of power in the neighborhood. The funny thing is, if she'd just reached out when I bought the place, if she'd introduced herself and welcomed me to the neighborhood like a normal person, none of this would have happened. I'm not a difficult neighbor. I keep my property maintained. I pay my dues. I follow the rules. But she chose to be a thief instead of a neighbor, and that choice cost her everything. Sometimes I see her car drive slowly past my house. I don't think she's stalking me or anything. I think she's just torturing herself looking at what she lost. The house she wanted so badly that she was willing to break the law. The neighborhood she ruled over for years until her own arrogance brought her down. I don't feel bad for her. She made her choices and she's living with the consequences. And every time I come home and see that fountain lit up in my front yard, I'm reminded that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about making sure the people who do wrong can't keep doing it. She wanted to live in my house so badly that she lost her own. And me? I'm living my best life in the home I actually own, surrounded by neighbors who are finally free from her tyranny. I call that a win. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Just read the other top post about taking a bank survey repeatedly, and it reminded me of my survey story. About 3 years ago, my wife and I bought our house. We realized at the time that most of the house maintenance was poorly maintained. Renters used to live in the house before us. One of the larger projects that needed to be done was a full driveway replacement, as the original driveway hadn't been refinished or maintained in almost 30 years. Knowing that we would need to replace the driveway, my wife and I started planning ahead for the eventual project. We decided at the time that we would also like to expand our driveway. We are one of only 3 houses in my neighborhood to not have a 3-car garage. So we decided that we would expand our driveway out so that we could at least have a 3rd stall, even if it was outside of our garage. In order to expand the driveway, we had to get 3 bids out. Bid 1 was for the driveway people themselves. 1 was to our underground sprinklers maintenance, as the expansion would move our existing lines. And finally, due to our land not being 100% flat, the final bid was to a landscaper to build a retaining wall in order to create a flat enough spot to expand our driveway. Due to the various companies working on this project, it meant that we had to make sure all 3 companies could work within the same timelines. The sprinklers were simple enough and not really an issue. The driveway people were great and gave us over a month of wiggle room to make everything work. The problem came from the landscaping company. We made them intimately aware of our timelines and explained the scope of the work, and they assured us multiple times that the deadlines would work. We had the landscapers scheduled for the first week after the driveway was ripped up. However, the landscapers never showed up. We called and rescheduled for the next week, and again the landscapers didn't show up. This happened twice more before it was literally the day before the driveway people were due back to finish the driveway, and the landscaping still was not done. The landscapers finally showed up, and I talked to them before I left for work that day, gave them my cell phone and some Gatorades before I left, and told them if there were any issues to please call me immediately. Got home from work to find 0 progress done on the project. Turns out the second I had left, the landscapers packed up and went to another job. I actually called the owner and idioted out his team. I have never been so mad about something. The project manager called me back and assured me that they wanted the driveway done first and the landscaping would follow, and that he personally would fix anything that was messed up as a result. Fine. The driveway was poured and the results were to be expected. Pretty brutal. About a week later, the landscapers finally built their wall and then added some finishing crap to the driveway. It looked terrible, especially for a brand new driveway. They then sent me my bill for the completed job. I immediately wrote back with pictures and explained that I was not paying for this job until it didn't look like crap and that I expected the landscapers to fix the mess they made. Well, I got ignored. At this point, they had started ignoring most of my communications. Until that is, about 3 months passed and the landscaper realized I was serious about not paying for their shoddy work. They reached out to me to figure out what was going on, which is when they finally looked at my email about the terrible work and my refusal to pay. By this point in time, it was Christmas and everything around me was frozen. The landscaper lamented not having a chance to fix their shoddy work before months had passed, and I lamented them ignoring my communications about the project being subpar in the first place. We discussed some ways to fix their duck up and settled on one that would at least make things look nicer, but would reduce my driveway width by about a foot, a solution I didn't like, but would at least mostly fix my issues. I left for work one day and came home to my driveway fixed. No note, no communications, they just came in and did it one day when they had time. Again, not exactly how I would have wanted it, but it was okay. My wife and I went back and forth before ultimately deciding to just pay everything, swear off the landscaper forever, and move on. The whole project had taken over 6 months and we were just done with it all. We paid the bill and moved on. About 5 months later, just before spring/summer was set to start, the landscaper started spamming my inbox with requests for reviews. This is right when most project biddings go out, so they were looking to boost their online visibility and to get projects for the next year. I ignored the first 10 or so emails that came through before deciding maybe I can actually write them a review. And I did. I wrote the exact experience I had with them, highlighted the lack of communication, the unprofessionalism, the frequent missed deadlines, and I even included pictures. Within a week, I received a Google reward because my review had over 1,000 views. The owner actually called me after another week and asked what he could do to make things right, which I told him that we were almost a year from the original project. Without a time machine, there wasn't much we could do. All in all, the project was kind of a failure. We expanded the driveway, but now it is a very tight squeeze, and so people rarely use the third slot. I now mostly just get mad when I see the retaining wall. I did get a ton of Google rewards for my review, and I hope it saved a ton of people the headache I went through with the landscaper. I was content with letting them screw me over and just moving on with a lesson learned, but they were persistent with their email campaign. Maybe don't ask people you screwed over to write you reviews? The next one is an entitled people story. I've been more than patient with my coworker. Let's call her Cassie. I work retail part-time as a key holder while also being a college student. I juggle a lot. So does everyone, right? But Cassie acts like she's the only one going through anything, while everyone else exists just to catch her slack. She constantly blows up my phone asking me to take her shifts, usually last minute and always with an excuse. I used to say yes sometimes when I needed the money, but never again. Not after the way she's treated me in actual emergencies. Let me walk you through just a few real examples. Winter emergency number 1, mental health crisis in my family. I was dealing with a family member in serious emotional distress and told her the night before that I couldn't cover her shift. 18 hours in advance, she said she wouldn't be able to make it anyway because her friend's car was stuck in the snow. It snowed maybe 4 to 5 inches. Girl, be serious. You had time to dig it out. I even offered to have my dad pull the car out with his F-150. He would have done it for the drama alone. And she goes, "No, that's okay." Then she claimed, "His car is running out of gas from trying so hard to get out of the snow." So what you are that's stuck but don't even want an option to even get back to your house? Right. The next morning, I let her know I still couldn't come in due to the emergency. She responded with, "I already told the manager you can come in a little later to close." I hadn't agreed to that at all. She also blew up my phone and the manager's phone, panicking and saying, "She's on Snapchat but not texting me back. What do I do?" Medical emergency, potential blood clot. I woke up with a swollen ankle and leg from a tendon injury. I was told to get medical attention immediately because it could have been a blood clot. When I asked her to cover for me, she said she doesn't have a ride on Wednesdays anymore. 3 days later, she texted asking me to cover for her so she could do laundry and clean and said, "I'll switch with you for your Wednesday shift next week." Wait, didn't you just say you can't work Wednesdays? Career opportunity. Netflix. I got reached out to for a super cool filming opportunity with Netflix. I only needed a 5-hour shift covered to go. When I asked her, she said she couldn't because her friend was stopping over to pick up clothes and a skateboard. I'm not joking. Finals week tech failure. During finals, my MacBook completely died mid-assignment. Since it was the last week on campus, I had one chance to go pick up a rental laptop the next day, which happened to be my work day. I asked her to take my shift so I could literally finish my semester. She said no, claiming I'd be working too many days. She is part-time, she does not get overtime, she has no other job or responsibilities. There is no excuse. Meanwhile, she continues to pester me and others to cover her shifts, usually for things like laundry, errands, or catching up on cleaning. And we all know she's out with friends or drinking. She's been written up twice already for attendance-related issues and is one strike away from termination. I don't take her shifts anymore. I don't care if she's desperate. Until she steps up and helps me even once in an actual emergency, I'm not her fallback plan, I'm not her shift mule, and I'm done pretending I'm okay being treated like one. Let me know if anyone else deals with this kind of manipulative, weaponized incompetence, because I swear the next time she says, "Can you take my shift? I need to do laundry," I might just print this out and hand it to her like a scroll. The next one is an entitled Parent Story, M34. I was at an amusement park last weekend and got in line for a popular ride. It had the timed wristbands and everything, but it was still about a 40-minute wait once you scanned in. People were packed in pretty close, sun blazing, everyone just trying to be patient. About 20 minutes in, this mom shows up with what looked like her whole crew, dad, 2 older kids, and a toddler. She starts weaving along the side of the queue doing the whole excuse me routine. The toddler has an ice cream that's melting fast and dripping on people's shoes as they shuffle forward. She stops right next to me and says, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Can we just squeeze in front of you? Our little one is overheating, he's so hot, we can't stand here," I told her pretty calmly. "Sorry, no, we've all been waiting." She immediately switches tone and goes, "Wow, so you'd rather a small child suffer than let a family go ahead? That's disgusting." Then she pulls out her phone and starts recording, pointing it at my face like she's about to get me canceled. Dad stands behind her doing the silent shrug like he's not involved. Meanwhile, the toddler is licking ice cream and smearing it on the rail. A couple people behind me started muttering. One guy said, "Lady, get to the back," and she snapped, "Mind your business." She tried to step forward anyway, like physically move past me, and I just held my spot and said no, go to the back. She kept filming and saying this man is bullying a mom, until a staff member noticed the commotion. Security came over, asked what was going on. She tried the same speech, plus showed her phone like it was evidence. The staff guy just pointed to the end of the line and told them to go there or leave the ride area. She huffed, called everyone heartless, and walked off still recording. Was I wrong for not just letting them in to avoid the drama? Anyway, thank you for watching.